One of the questions we get asked quite often is, why is the T5 discovery different to what we found at Carboyd? We've done quite a lot of work on the stratigraphy and understanding the orientation of this deposit and the Carboyd complex in general. We've done a lot of mapping. I'll just quickly draw what I mean. We know from the work that we've done that if this was the surface at the time Carboyd came through, which was 2.7 billion years ago, round about, we know that the Carboyd intrusion itself formed at 30 kilometres depth. And essentially, I'm going to simplify it, the Carboyd intrusion was a pipe-like structure, and at some point in its evolution it took a bit of a flat roll, and then it's come up, continued up to through to the surface. Here it's just a big volcano. So round about 30 kilometres depth we have the T5 area. This is what we call the T5 trap site. This is something we call the embayment, and that's to some 2 kilometres to the south of us. We know that the flow direction was flowing in this direction. What happens at Carboyd is that the surrounding rock is quite sulfide rich, and we have these bands of sulfide rich sediments sitting down at the base, and we've mapped those on surface. And we can see the sulfides, as this intrusion's come through, it's picked up these sulfides, and these sulfides start to drop into the melt, and they get carried upstream. Now the sulfides come with silica as well, and that silica sort of encases the sulfides, and they tend to form these layers, and this layer we call the plume. It's really a sulfide gelatinous plume. As that comes up through the melt, we have a change in the orientation of the intrusion, and that's really critical, because as this starts to flow we suddenly start to create turbulence. These turbulence are very important for liberating these sulfides from the silica plume. As these sulfides get liberated, they start to fall to the bottom, and this is where we're starting to form the T5 massive sulfides. So it's really this area at T5 that we're interested in. Currently our drill program, our phase 3 drilling, has only really just targeted this small area here. This is about another 3.5 kilometres we're yet to test. One thing about understanding the flow direction, which is very critical, is that if we know that we're creating turbulence here, these turbulence start to die out and we get a more laminar flow as we get further upstream. Less turbulence means that we should be precipitating more massive sulfides as we go further north. So we're expecting to find, as we go further north, in theory at least, a big build-up of massive sulfides on this little shoulder in here. And then of course everything just gets ejected out of the vent. The difference between Carboyd and T5 is further back down in this embayment we actually have another sulfide trap. We're not sure exactly of that location. We're not sure of its depth. It could be 2 kilometres, could be half a kilometre, could be 1 kilometre underground. What happens is, as these sulfides stay molten for quite some time after everything is solidified, they tend to fractionate out. And what we see with the Carboyd rocks intrusion is that these sulfides then form a breccia, and they actually ejected off the top into these massive pipes. And these massive sulfide pipes were actually the ones mined by Western Mining back in the early 70s. These breccias look similar to this photo here. You can see a photo of these two guys who went underground back when PPE wasn't so necessary, obviously. And we have this copper sulfides coming up through these massive blocks of gabbro. Now this gabbro is important because this gabbro actually exists as subsequent flows of gabbro up through in this area of the stratigraphy. This is all part of the Carboyd intrusion now, because over time the Carboyd intrusion inflated and it got bigger and it got bigger. So these sulfide pipes that were mined at Carboyd are actually sitting up in this area here in a different rock type. One ordinarily wouldn't find these kinds of sulfides in this kind of rock type. So this is how we feel there's a link between the Carboyd mine area itself, which got mined up through here, and the T5 discovery, which we're drilling down in this area. Somewhere down through at the beginning of this trap site, we think there's a link between the two.